Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, the National Broadcasting Company brings you the latest news at home and overseas. Now, here are reports by our staff correspondents in three key capitals of Europe, from Berlin, Bern, Switzerland, and London. Now, first to the German capital, where Alex Dreyer is ready to report.
Hello, NBC. This is Alex Dreyer in Berlin. The German High Command this afternoon broke its silence of the past few days on land operations in the East and stated where the new German offensive has been developing. According to the High Command, a tremendous battle has taken place in the area north of the Sea of Azov. It's the first time that the High Command has referred to land operations in this sector of the front. The official communiqué says that German troops, working together with their allies, are pursuing the beaten enemy. The High Command adds that during the deep drive by motorized and panzer units into the lines of the retreating enemy, the staff of the 9th Russian Army was taken prisoner. But according to the communiqué, the Army's commander had already fled. Along the other areas of the front, the High Command reports that operations are proceeding according to plan. Another night attempt of the Soviet to land forces on the coast west of Leningrad was repulsed, according to the communiqué. A majority of the transports were sunk, and the enemy units which managed to land are said to have been completely destroyed. The Luftwaffe last night is reported to have directed attacks against Leningrad and Moscow. Although not mentioned by today's High Command, the port of Rostov on the mouth of the Don for the first time was attacked yesterday by the Luftwaffe. In the turbulent little protectorate of Bohemian Moravia, where the Gestapo is reported to be pushing through a thorough cleaning-up program, at least one man has had his sentence of death postponed, but of course only for the moment. He is Elias, the 62-year-old premier of the protectorate, who was sentenced to death after having been charged and tried with the preparation of high treason. But here's the interesting angle. Hitler himself ordered the postponement. According to officials in the propaganda ministry here this morning, the Germans intend to use Elias as a witness in the trial of other Czechs also accused of having indulged in treasonable activities. Czech papers have carried the report of the postponement. Negotiations for the exchange of wounded prisoners of war between the British and the Germans have fallen completely through, according to information available here today. The official Foreign Office spokesman today at noon said that the British conditions for the exchange are simply grotesque. According to the spokesman, the British expected to return but 50 wounded Germans in exchange for some 500 wounded British. The exchange was to have started today. The spokesman added that arrangements for the exchange were first begun on a purely diplomatic basis through the good offices of the United States, but that the British yesterday started to twist the thing into a propaganda offensive through the means of the British radio. The Germans are willing to make an exchange, he said, but only on a one-for-one basis. He then suggested that the British load up some of their boats with German internees, that is, women and children, and whereby a one-to-one ration exchange basis could probably be worked out. This is Alex Dreyer in Berlin, now returning you to NBC in New York.
Now, next we hear from Charles Lanius in Bern, Switzerland.
Hello, NBC. This is Charles Lanius in Bern. Reports reaching here this morning indicate that one of the bloodiest battles of the war is being fought in the area before the Russian industrial city of Charkov. After the capture of Poltava, the Germans are said to have thrown in heavy reinforcements in order to continue their thrust toward Charkov without a let-up. This new force is apparently meeting with terrific resistance. Moscow claims that Budyeni has succeeded in regrouping his armies and has started a flanking counteroffensive, which has completely stopped the German drive. The Germans say that progress is being made. They admit, however, that the going is tough, and one Berlin message states that the battle is developing into one of the biggest yet fought in the East. It would seem that the Germans are putting all they have into this fight, presumably because they feel they must take Charkov and then push upward toward Moscow before the winter weather catches up with them. All this appears to be in line with the German High Command's supposed plan to encircle the Russian capital in a giant pincer's move from the north and the south. Although the heaviest fighting appears to be in the upper section of the southern front, extremely hard fighting seems to be going on all along the entire front. The Reds have announced the whole of Timoshenkov's forces in the center and important parts of Voroshilov's armies in the north have now moved into battle with the invaders. So with Budyeni's reorganized forces counterattacking in the south, men are fighting along the whole length of the eastern front. The Germans to blitz on into Moscow and make their kill before bad weather starts, and the Russians to hold them up and subject their attackers to the uncertainties and difficulties of a long winter campaign. Today, the Soviets announced that the situation in the Crimea isn't as critical as it first seemed. There, mixed divisions of Red infantry and Marines have tangled with the German infantry. The Russians claim the Germans were defeated. They also report another victory over the German infantry in the Odessa area. Odessa is turning out to be a hard nut for the Germans to crack. More than a month and a half ago, I was invited, along with other correspondents, to go on a military junket to Odessa. Odessa was then expected to fall momentarily. And from Berlin, it certainly looked that way. We were even told the day we would leave Berlin. Of course, that trip was postponed, and now those in charge of arrangements would like to forget about it entirely. They probably could if it weren't for a few comic correspondents who seem to get a kick out of asking officials when the trip to Odessa is to start. Around the propaganda ministry, they used to take it seriously, but now they've caught on and just laugh it off. Up north, Leningrad seems to be standing as firmly as Gibraltar, and the Reds deny that that city is in any danger of being taken. The Russians claim that if the Germans expect any measure of success in that area, it'll be necessary to maintain an army of 1 million men there during the winter. Another Moscow message contains a frank admission that the Germans are now numerically superior in tanks and other equipment. The report goes on to say that the German infantry divisions have greater quantities of automatic arms than their own infantry, but that this superiority is by no means a crushing handicap. It's pointed out in the dispatch that in spite of this armament deficiency, the Russian armies are still very well equipped. From these statements, it would appear that the Russians need the long winter campaign they're fighting for as a breathing spell, during which they hope to make up some of their losses in equipment. This is Charles Lanius in Bern. I now return you to NBC in New York.
Our next report is from the British capital. Go ahead, London.
This is John McBain in London. British submarines have had new successes in the Mediterranean. The Admiralty today reported that the undersea craft have sunk or hit by torpedoes and seriously damaged 11 Italian ships. The attempt to arrange the exchange of wounded prisoners between Britain and Germany has broken down, and the German prisoners who've spent the past 3 days in the hospital ships at New Haven are today being disembarked and returned to their prison camps and hospitals. Everything had been arranged, and the Germans would have left Britain last night, after the dramatic exchange of radio messages between the British and German governments. Then came the final German statement that in spite of the Geneva Convention, they were demanding a prisoner-for-prisoner exchange. Originally, all the British wounded, about 1,500, were to be exchanged for all the German wounded, less than 100. The last-minute German change of mind leads some observers to the belief that the whole thing was a carefully calculated incident in the German war of nerves, intended to put the British government in the position of having to refuse to bring home badly wounded British soldiers. Although the exchange can mean little in a war in which many thousands are being killed and wounded each day on the Russian front, relatives of the wounded British soldiers have certainly suffered a severe blow after days of thinking that their menfolk would soon be home. It was officially stated in London today that the British government now aren't prepared to risk being made the victims of a flagrant breach of faith on the part of the German government, more especially as the bulk of the British sick and wounded would clearly lose all chance of repatriation. It's officially emphasized here that the German government, when the negotiations began, were only concerned with the prisoners of war and didn't insist, although they mentioned it, that civilian internees be repatriated. Then the Germans demanded the mutual repatriation of sick and wounded combatants in third countries like Era, Uruguay, and unoccupied France. The British agreed to the repatriation of civilian internees and got together a batch of 60 German women prisoners to send home. The British also agreed to the business of swapping prisoners from third countries. But the last-minute German upset of the arrangements affecting the original exchange of wounded prisoners, who, according to the Geneva Convention, were to be sent back without regard to rank or numbers, seems to have ended the negotiations. It was announced today that Mr. Epley, the Vice Premier, is going to America as representative of the British government at the conference of the International Labor Office. The Air Ministry today publishes a booklet giving the most complete and readable story of the Bomber Command yet available. Bomber Command traces the history of the British Bomber Force from 2 o'clock on September 3rd, 1939, when a Blenheim began photographing units of the German Navy on their way out of Wilhelmshaven, until just the other day. It tells about the flying qualities of bomber pilots and says that as far back as the spring of 1939, the French General Staff was told details of British bomber strength and possible use of bombers was discussed. The French wanted the bombers to be used as a sort of long-range artillery against railroads and aerodromes, but the British pointed out that with the strength at their disposal, this would be ineffective. The French Air Force did no day bombing at all because they had less than 40 day bombers in their whole force. When the German attack began, General Gamelin refused to allow the British to bomb troop concentrations in Germany on the ground that civilians might be killed or injured. This policy limited the British bombing for 24 hours to German columns on the march, a difficult and unsuitable target for the heavy British bombers. On May 10th, the British advanced air striking force had 135 serviceable bombers in France. In 5 days, they lost 75 of this number. The blitzkrieg from May 10th to June 20th cost the whole British Bomber Command just 40% of its first-line strength. Bomber Command for the first time officially confirms the well-known report that on June 10th, when British bombers based near Marseilles were to start the first raid on Italy, the French authorities ran military trucks out over the aerodrome to keep the British planes from taking off. This is John McVane in London, returning you to the National Broadcasting Company in New York.
And that's the latest news on the war. Now, Earl Godwin brings us word on developments at home, speaking from the newsroom in Washington.
Good morning, folks. You know, the President is home about now, and he's getting ready to receive at the White House a group of congressional leaders, mostly senators from both parties, to discuss the ways and means connected with taking some of the wraps off of the Neutrality Act, amending it or repealing it or whatever can be done. And just about the time this government is getting ready to place anti-aircraft and anti-submarine guns on the decks of American ships sailing the lease-land seas with American munitions under that Panama flag, the Panama cabinet meets and says, in effect, nothing doing. There'll be no guns on any merchant ships flying the Panama flag. If you boys up there in the United States want to protect your munitions of war, as they traverse what's left of the seven seas, just use your own guns and your own flag. Thus, the little spunky outfit to the south of us rolls right over the legalistic expedient by which a great many American ships have sailed around the Neutrality Act. Of course, so far, the Nazis haven't hesitated to haul off and just let her go when one of those raider commanders squinted through his periscope and saw an American ship with a Panama flag. The President the other day mentioned the fact that they were thinking about putting defensive guns on the decks of these American-owned ships under Panama registry, and there wasn't any question about it except where they're going to get the guns and so forth and so on. But this Act of Panama, which might have been inspired, may hurry up the arming of American ships under the American flag. The President will go into conference today on that and other subjects. And from where I'm sitting, this conference appears to be a discussion of ways and means, practical ways and means, legislative means, as to what can be rammed through Congress and what cannot. Sam Rayburn, Speaker of the House, who knows the House like a good housewife knows her own domain, is prophesying that the vast noise over the religious freedom issue will not deter the passage of the two important money and credit bills before that body. One is the second installment on the Lend-Lease program, 6 more American billions for embattled Britain. The other is the measure to recharge the batteries of the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, which have run out of credit. And the Congress is restoring this power and will probably hear someone denounce Russia in the debate, because Russia is going to be aided through RFC. Surely there will be a tremendous outburst when the Lend-Lease bill comes up, but not an outburst that will stop the bill. The anti-Russian sentiment in the House has been strengthened by the religious freedom furor. Many opponents of the administration's policy do not believe there is any religious freedom whatsoever in the Soviet Republic. And that's all from Washington at this time.
And that's the latest news we've heard this morning from John McVane in London, Charles Lanius in Bern, Alex Dreyer in Berlin, and Earl Godwin in Washington. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
Of the Jergens Journal and Walter Winchell.
Good evening, Mr. and Mr. North and South America and all the ships and clippers at sea. Let's go to press. Flash. Moscow. The Soviet government reports that stubborn fighting continues along the entire front. The Russians claim that in one encounter they destroyed 38 German planes. They admit, however, losing 17. another Russian unit on the Central Front claims destroying 42 Nazi tanks and 60 trucks loaded with 10 large field guns and considerable ammunition. Moscow just admitted that some Nazi panzer units are now only 65 miles from the city of Moscow. Cairo. British fighter planes dropped torpedoes over a long convoy and struck 2 Italian merchant ships. Flash. Washington, D.C. Ladies and gentlemen, stand by. The Navy just revealed that 10 men were injured and 11 are missing from the United States destroyer Connie, which was hit by a torpedo on Friday, 350 miles off Iceland. I am now waiting for the names of the casualties. Stand by, please. New York City. The condition of the beloved George M. Cohan is reported good. Mr. Cohan was operated on yesterday for a major surgery at the Flower Fifth Avenue Hospital, New York City. New York. Dr. Frederick B. Robinson, who retired recently as president of City College in New York, died today. He was 58. Miami. The United States Coast Guard has ordered the flying of hurricane signals from Tarpon Springs to Sarasota, Florida. A hurricane of moderate intensity is moving northeastward from the Gulf of Mexico. I said moderate intensity. Moderate. Have you got that list? Ladies and gentlemen, I now have the list in front of me of the injured. No, these are the 10 missing men from the destroyer Connie. Floyd Andrew Camp, ship's cook of National City, California. Lloyd Dalton Lafleur, pharmacist mate, Beaumont, Texas. Luther Ale Curtis, a water tender of Wilmington, North Carolina. Herman August C. Gageway, a water tender of Troy, New York. Louis Dobnikar, that's D-O-B-N-I-K-A-R, a water tender of Cleveland, Ohio. Ira William Stoltz, a fireman of Cambria County, Pennsylvania. Sidney Gerald Larry, L-A-R-R-I-V-I-E-R-E. Sidney Gerald, L-A-R-R-I-V-I-E-R-E, a fireman of Lafayette, Louisiana. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Have you 3 more? I am reading the names of the 10 missing men, or 11, are they? From the destroyer Connie, which was torpedoed Friday, 350 miles off Iceland. To continue with the names. George Alexander Calvert, a fireman of Gillespie, Illinois. Russell Burdick Wade, a fireman of Houston, Alabama. Harry Tull Young, a machinist mate of Rita, Arkansas. Dwight Floyd Pyle, a seaman second class of Bainbridge, Georgia. The injured include Samuel R. Kurtz, or Torpedo Man, of Eric, Pennsylvania, or Erie. Eric is correct. Eric is correct. Eric, Pennsylvania. Leonard Frantikowski, a chief boatswain's mate of Norfolk, Virginia. That's all the names we have at present. Behind the international scene, a summary of inside news based on authentic and last-hour diplomatic intelligence. Singapore. The main Japanese battle fleet is reported to have passed north through Chosin Strait into the landlocked Sea of Japan. Concentrations of troops on the Amur River indicate a 3-directional blitz on Russia's maritime provinces by land and sea. The Japanese war party is in a frenzy of effort to reassure Tokyo that it is safe from Russian bombers, the Japanese nightmare only 4 hours away. Washington. President Roosevelt is expected to open the eastern Mediterranean to American shipping. The purpose is a direct supply route to Turkey. This means American naval convoys in the Indian Ocean. Washington. Major South American republics have asked if they can depend on Washington's support in a wholesale deportation of Axis ambassadors for abuse of diplomatic privilege. Washington will reply that self-defense is the sovereign right of any American republic. And it will add, bueno, mi amigo. London. For the first time in history, Heinrich Himmler, the chief of the Gestapo, will introduce mass starvation as a discipline for rebellious populations. That is why Winston Churchill will turn down Herbert Hoover's new plan to feed Europe. Attention, Mr. and Mrs. United States. Tokyo is ready to launch its Far Eastern Empire. The Japanese fleet is waiting only for the Nazi high tide in Russia. This squeeze diplomacy is a picture of the dictator's new world. While Moscow holds on, Japan offers the olive branch. When Moscow is falling back, Japan rattles the bayonet. The Axis program is now fully illustrated. Peace at a Munich or extinction at a Moscow. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was elected your constitutional commander-in-chief almost 1 year ago. He has acted on your mandate. He has told the dictators that they cannot decide the destiny of the American people. His choice was made neither at Munich nor at Moscow. It was made at Valley Forge. While President Roosevelt faces our foes, it is our duty to protect him while his back is turned. I refer to those self-called patriots who denounce the president at $600 per speech. America's big job is to first defeat these defeatists. We all can stand up to Hitler by standing alongside of Mr. Wilkie and President Roosevelt.
Friede mit dem deutschen Volk? Jawohl. Friede mit Hitler? Niemals. Friede mit irgendeinem Vertreter des Hitler-Systems? Niemals. Friede mit dem Herrenclub? Niemals. Friede mit den Großindustriellen? Niemals. Friede mit den Reichsmarschällen, Generalfeldmarschällen, Generalen? Niemals. Selbst wenn es 20 Jahre dauern sollte, Hitler und seiner Kriegsmaschine zu Staub zu zermalmen.
United Press News, hot, fast, brief, brought by your SO reporter who says gasoline is an important defense material. Use it economically.
Tokyo. Japan is moving toward a special session of her parliament tonight. Emperor Hirohito reportedly has been asked to call the Diet into meeting in mid-November, and political quarters say that the new Tojo government will be called upon to clarify the status of United States-Japanese negotiations. Washington. Navy Secretary Knox has declared that the Far East is like a bombshell. Knox said, in effect, that a collision with Japan is inevitable. Moscow. The Russians are standing firm in their defense of Moscow, aided by the weapons of General Winter, mud, and snow. The Germans, admitting their push on Moscow has been held up, are hurling heavy blows on Russian forces in the far south. Moscow confirms the resumption of savage hostilities in the vital Donetsk basin. The Russians say the Germans are being checked in most places. Russia's southern armies now are under command of Marshal Timoshenko.
Vienna, Austria, 1934. Chancellor Dollfuss assassinated in Nazi putsch. I was there. Oklahoma Territory, 1893. United States Marshal brings law to the lawless West. I was there. Northern China, 1927. 30 million Chinese migrate in epic famine. I was there. I was there. Again, the marketers of Mobil Gas, America's favorite gasoline, and Mobil Oil, the largest selling motor oil in the world, present eyewitness stories of headline events. And here to introduce our guests is the noted news reporter, your host, Knox Manning.
Thank you, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. In our time, history moves in high gear. Things happen rapidly. We hear of them rapidly. And too often we fail to make note of their value as great human drama. But again tonight, we recreate dramatic events from detailed accounts of people who were present, who come to the microphone to affirm their stories with the words, I was there. Exactly 53 minutes past noon, July 25th, 1934. The office of Chancellor Engelbert Dollfuss of Austria.
Dr. Dollfuss, Yes, have we checked?
You must escape quickly, Doctor. Out the secret entrance. Escape? Police have overpowered the guard. Are taking over the building. Hurry, as you value your life. Good.
Exactly, Dr. Dorothy. It would be foolish for you to try to get away.
Who are you? What do you want?
Just this.
Dr. Dolphus!
Chancellor Dolphus shot. The Austrian Chancellor lay in the hands of Nazi plotters. This was the most daring political putsch of all time set into motion. That unbelievably audacious plan to take over independent Austria failed. And yet, we present tonight a man well qualified to tell us how it almost succeeded. Ladies and gentlemen, the former Undersecretary of Propaganda for the Austrian government, Dr. Larry Holt.
Thank you. Yes, that Nazi putsch of 1934 very nearly succeeded. It had its beginning with the corruption of men in key positions, and it struck with the suddenness of lightning. At a little after 1 on that quiet afternoon, I was at the Café Louvre, having lunch with my good friend Geddes, correspondent for the London paper.
I say, Larry, coming out of that telephone booth. Isn't that John Gunther?
So it is. John Gunther.
Oh, what in the devil are you doing here?
Why, I'm having lunch.
Lunch? Good Lord, man. Haven't you heard that there's trouble at the Chancellery?
Trouble?
Oh, come now, Gunther. That's a pretty poor joke. Joke? All right. I haven't got time to argue. I'll see you at the Chancellery.
Well, what do you make of it? Why, it's ridiculous. I came past the Chancellery only a few minutes ago and...
Oh, what's the matter?
I just remembered. The usual guards at the Chancellery gates. They weren't there. Come on, Geddy. We're going to find out about this.
Gunther, what have you found out? Nothing, except that every door on the Chancellery is locked and every shutter closed. No one can get in or out.
Oh, that's fantastic. Come on, around to the basement windows on the side. I'll see if I can raise anyone.
If I were in your position, Holt, I'd call the president of police.
I already have. He said I'd been reading too many mystery stories.
It's insane. The principal government building held by unknown persons, and no one will even pay any attention.
Down here. You better stand back while I knock on the shutters. Open up! Open up! This is Holt of the Propaganda Ministry. Open up! What's going on in there?
Yesterday, Dr. Dolphus, as he said, a new government has been formed. Now get away from this window or I fire.
Larry, get back. Scared whoever they are, they mean business. There's only one group in Austria who would do this. The Nazis. Yes, the Nazis. And they'd never be fools enough to grab the Chancellery this way unless they expected outside support.
You can bet they do expect outside support. And every minute they're in there gives it more time to gather strength.
Exactly. Take my word for it. Unless somebody does something about this soon, all Austria will be in their hands.
Actually, we must act, mein Herren, and act quickly.
Then it is agreed. Until Herr Dolphus and Vice Chancellor Feierfried, Kurt Schussnick heads the government.
I'll answer.
Hello.
Herr von Schussnick, this is Holt. I have important news.
Yeah, we've already heard, Herr Holt. We are forming a new government now to combat the rebels.
But there's more.
Yeah?
We just found out Herr Dolphus has been shot.
Dolphus shot?
They let Vice Chancellor Fire out to the balcony of the Chancellery at the point of a gun.
Yeah?
We learned then what had happened. Something must be done.
Something will be done. We send Dr. Neustädter with Heimwehr troops immediately.
But if the Nazis refuse to surrender, if they're able to hold out until support is organized...
In that case, may God help Austria.
Dr. Neustädter, look. Herr Fey. They brought him out on the balcony again.
Captain, you soldiers ready?
Yeah, my lad.
Then call up to Herr Fey. Tell him we are going to storm the building.
Herr Fey! Listen to me, Herr Fey! Herr Fey! You are prepared to storm the building.
No, don't do it. Make no move without my order.
They've got to. I am in command here.
No, Herr Neustädter. I am Secretary of Public Security. No action can be taken without my order.
You are mistaken, Mr. Fey. Government officers at the point of a gun are not competent to give orders. Tell the rebels to come out.
No, they will not come.
Then we will come in after them. We give them exactly 20 minutes to surrender.
20 minutes. They will decide the fate of Austria. 5:45.
They've got to come out. They've got to.
5:55. Why don't they attack?
It won't do any good. It might take hours, and hours will be too late.
6 o'clock. They haven't come out. They never will now. I'm afraid they never will.
6:04.
No use. We may as well go file our story.
Oh, look. Thank God.
They've surrendered. They've surrendered. Austria is safe from the Nazis.
Yes, Mr. Manning, the crisis was over. But when we rushed into the building, we found it was too late to save Chancellor Adolphus. And I'll never forget the prophetic words uttered by his faithful valet Hedvicek, who was still at his side.
Adolphus is the only man who could stop the Nazis in our country. This gentleman is the beginning of the end for Austria.
Time and events have proven the grim truth of those words. I was there.
Early hours of a dark morning, mobile gas dealers are sometimes called upon to render an unusual service for some customer. As an instance of this, surely Bob Preach, who operates a mobile gas station at 3rd and Jefferson Streets in Phoenix, can say, I was there. At 2 o'clock one recent morning, Bob was really sawing wood. Hello. Hello.
Hello. Is this you, Bob?
Yeah, I reckon it is. Who's talking?
This is Max Kerr of the Kerr Produce Company.
Oh, sure. What can I do for you?
I'm in a jam.
Not in jail, are you?
No, but I might as well be. I'm stuck out here at Yarnell Hill, about 75 miles out, with a broken wheelboat. I got a truck with $600 load of perishable stuff, and if I don't get it to market, I'm sunk.
You are in a fix. Anybody near there that can help you?
Not a soul. I've tried several places, but no dice. I thought of you because I know how willing you
Oh,
are.
sure. You just climb back in that truck and take a snooze. I'll be along before you have your second nightmare.
And so Bob Preach drove 75 miles to Yarnell Hill, and in exactly 3.5 hours, the truckload of perishable goods was roaring along the market. Why don't you, too, try the cheerful, intelligent, and loyal services of these dealers displaying the sign of the Flying Red Horse?
Oklahoma Territory, 1893.
All right, Jake. It's your move.
Yep. I'm going to jump you. It's him. There.
Yeah. Old Checker Slicker. Let me see.
Hold up. Duck for cover. Hold up.
Well, I could move here. But on the other hand...
Looks like they're holding up the bank cross street again.
Yeah, sure they be. Calm that man in the King's Row, will you?
All right. Don't get excited.
Yes, in the Oklahoma of the 90s, a bank robbery was nothing to get excited about. And there are those who say train robberies were more regular than train schedules. But all that was changed in 1893 when law came to Oklahoma in the person of the man we are proud to present tonight, the first United States Marshal of the Oklahoma Territory, Colonel E.D. Nix.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. In 1893, the Conference of Oklahoma Businessmen decided the territory needed a United States Marshal. For some reason or other, they figured I could handle the job, as they sent me to Washington to get an appointment from President Grover Cleveland. In a short time, I was back in the...
So yesterday, this here Nick blows into Guthrie showing off that new badge.
What a target that's going to make, Anchor!
This fella's a regular tool. That a fact? Yeah, it sure is, stranger. Why, first thing he orders that from now on it's against the law to tote guns in town.
Against the law to tote guns? My. Well, that fellow must be crazy, wouldn't you say?
Crazy as a low-coat cow. Here, just look at that sign there behind the bar. He stuck 'em up all over town. Firearms prohibited. Watch me get the O out of pro.
Yeah, that's right. Good shooting there, friend. Let me take a look at that gun, will you?
Why, sure.
Uh-huh. Nice piece of hardware. I'll tell you what, Gus. You drop in at my office when you're leaving town, and I'll give it back to you.
Hey, wait a minute. What is it?
Oh, maybe I ought to introduce myself. Nix is the name. I guess you heard. I'm the new marshal around here.
Say, things is really happening in this town. Here where Nix's deputies got old Willie McCoy.
No.
Yep. Day before yesterday's the Reuben boys. You can take it from me, E.G. Nix has brought law and order to Oklahoma. Yes, sir, law and order.
Law and order.
Well, Captain Redchurch, you don't understand this Nix. He ain't like most sheriffs. He's tricky. Well, he just don't play fair.
Yeah. The trouble is you're all scared of him, the whole lot of you.
Oh, no.
Okay, then. Okay, we deal the cards. Our man gets him, and gets him good. And I'm dealing.
Yeah, but...
Shut up and watch your cards. Okay. You, Joe. 7 of hearts. Connors?
Deuce of hearts.
Richard? Why should I bother? I got the ace of spades on the bottom of the deck, and I'm dealing it to myself.
Marshal Nix.
Oh, yeah. Tillman, what's up?
Redchurch. Captain Redchurch across the hall. Says he wants to see you.
Red shirt, huh? Did he say what for?
No, but I got my hunches. There's a buzz under his shirt front, and I don't figure it's a box of candy. So we grab him?
No, just take over here. I'll be right back.
But you be careful, E.D. He's got him.
Don't worry. Oh, Red shirt.
Aye.
Bill Tillman says you want to see me.
Yeah. Got a little present for you.
Oh. Well, that's right nice, Red shirt. What is it?
It's this, Nix. And you better start saying your prayers. I'm getting you good this time.
Red shirt. I'm surprised at you. Don't you know it's against the law to shoot
Marshal, are you... Marshal, are you all right?
I'm all right, Bill. But I figure Red shirt will need a little patching up.
Oh.
Well, you better wake him up and run him out of town.
Come on, Red shirt. Wake up.
Oh, I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have done it. Pa told me I'd get in trouble if I ever did anything like that.
You'll always get in trouble pulling a gun on an officer of the law.
No, it ain't that. It was dealing that ace off the bottom of the deck to myself. I guess it don't pay, to be honest.
Well, Colonel Nix, I understand after rounding up a few hundred assorted rascals of Red Shirt's class, you and your deputies got to work on some of the really bad boys, like the Doolin Dalton gang.
That's right. From then on, we had orders backed by the United States government to deal with train and bank robbers by shooting first and then asking questions. Today, that might seem a little harsh. We believe me, it was the only way to bring law to Oklahoma. I know. I was there.
Hey, Bill, if you were taking your best girl out driving in a horse and buggy...
What would I be doing with a horse and buggy?
Oh, that's a long time ago. And suppose you saw a sign with the word farrier on it. Now, what would you do?
I'd drive right on by.
I mean, what would the word suggest to you? What reason would you have for stopping at that sign?
Would it be a new kind of hamburger?
Oh, no.
Farrier. I give up.
Well, you'd stop there if your horse needed a new shoe, because a farrier is a blacksmith.
And a mighty man was he. Here's one for you, only I'm more up to date. Suppose you were taking your best girl out driving in an automobile and you ran out of gas. What would you do?
I'd park.
No, stupid. I mean, what kind of a sign would you look for?
Why, that's easy. I'd look for the sign of the Flying Red Horse.
Ah, smart man, Joe. And he's only one of thousands of motorists who look for the sign of the Flying Red Horse when in need of gasoline or motor oil. They stop for gasoline because there they get Mobile Gas, America's favorite gasoline.
And for the new Mobil Oil, a motor oil that cleans where it lubricates. The largest selling motor oil in the world.
How many seasons had passed since rain last fell on the little village by the Great Wall? There were few who could say. It was important only that before the drought, torrential rains had gullied the fields and washed the seed away, and that now lack of rain had caked the ground hard and turned the roads into ankle-deep rivers of dust. No one but the village idiot tried to till his land.
Now came the soldiers of the marauding warlords, Chan-Tso Lin, demanding taxes. And when the villagers protested that tribute had already been paid for 3 years in advance, they would have a fourth. Their houses were ransacked, and pitiful hordes of grain taken from their hiding places. He was very rich indeed, who saved enough food for tomorrow.
But then there was word of a great new land open to the people of North China. Manchuria, a place of rich soil and neither too much nor too little rain. And the government of the new China would provide passage by sea to all who could reach the coast. It was a journey of many miles, and death already trod the dusty roadways. No one but fools stayed behind.
North China, 1927. To the south, the rising Republican government, strong in its new freedom, had solved many of China's ancient problems. But in the north, millions, not yet touched by the tide of progress, lived as they had through the centuries. And in 1927, one of the most disastrous famines of modern times struck at North China and took an estimated toll of 4.5 million of lives. And tonight, a man who was there, who lived and journeyed with migrating hordes fleeing to Manchuria, is here to tell us of his experiences. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. William Wolfe.
Thank you. I joined the stream of Chinese famine refugees at Xinjiang, 250 miles from their goal, the seaport town of Tsingtao. I was determined to see if conditions were as bad as reported. And that first night, seeing thousands of ragged human skeletons huddled around tiny campfires, I began to learn.
Poor devils. Poor starving devils.
Not a pleasant sight, is it?
Huh?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to startle you. I'm Arthur Glennon, China Mission Society.
Oh, pleasure. My name's William Wolfe.
And you've come to see if the stories you've heard about the famine are true.
That's right. And in your case?
I'm a missionary, Mr. Wolfe. I've been traveling with these people all the way from Kansu province.
Kansu? You mean you've been with them for more than 1,000 miles?
I've been with them for 103 days of suffering and starvation, Mr. Wolfe. And you want to know what the famine conditions really are? Then come with me. I can show you. Wretched, ragged bundles of humanity, these children, they all had parents when the migration began. Now I'm their only guardian.
Oh, nothing but bones. And the older one, the way he stares.
Starvation sometimes affects the mind before it destroys the body, Mr. Wolfe. The Li Nang family. They invite us to take rice with them.
Rice?
The invitation was merely traditional. What they're really eating is bark from a tree, ground up with a handful of bran.
The man in the silk robes. He looks as if he had plenty of money.
He has. His business is booming.
Business?
He buys and sells human beings. Rather than see them starve, parents often sell their children for a few silver dollars. the Cheng family. Once they were prosperous. So much so the eldest son, Cheng Ha, has even learned a little English. Now they've sold their last possession to keep their aged and venerated father alive.
It's hard to believe. Even after seeing all this with my own eyes.
Wait until tomorrow. Wait until you see them on the move. You'll consider your pity of tonight as wasted.
This dust. How do they stand it?
The pain of their hunger is worse. Look, another one's fallen by the roadside.
Is there something we can do?
No. He's too far gone.
Dr. Grennan.
Huh?
Dr. Grennan.
Yes, Cheng Ha?
Come help, please. Great aged man sick.
Father, come on, Wolf. Where is he, Cheng Ha?
Here, by road. Wolf Grennan. Dai Fu Lai Lo Su Li.
Coi there. Baba, bin de chong li hai.
Oh, thank you, Da. Let's look at him.
Is that fever, Dr. Grennan?
I don't think so. What's he been eating?
Come this out. I'll be under something.
What does he say? Dried up weed is all they had. Have you any water left in your canteen?
Yes, a little. Here.
Give him this water to drink, Cheng Ha.
I shan't you, Baba.
I've heard there's a Red Cross station a few li ahead. If you can get him there, he'll be all right. But he'll have to be carried.
I carry Wai Su Li. But she walk now.
Ning yuan to tao. Mi ko yi petso, Baba.
Good, Suli. It's the only way. Suli says she'll gladly walk so the old man may be carried. You see, it's still 2 weeks yet before her baby will be born.
Good Lord. Glennon, huh? How far have we come?
200 miles. Still 50 to go.
Weak. I am getting so weak. Slowly, my wife.
Yet, little way. Father, my husband.
When I think of the miles of our friends who have been left by the road, rags, bones, rot in the sun.
Do not think of yesterdays. Think only of the tomorrows into which our son will be born.
Listen, everyone. This railroad train, the government of New China has attempted to take us rest of the way to Tsingtao. Everyone into boxcar. Come, Sully. Come quickly. Mayor Shanghai, stop. Why you stop us? The government sent this train.
Sun Solin, my lord of war, is now government of this province. He has need of this car.
Oh, you must let us.
Okay.
You cannot stop us.
Okay.
Shanghai.
There. Now, perhaps the rest of you will have the sense to move on.
Glennon, look by the roadside. Sue Lee alone. Come on.
Suli, it's Dr. Glennon. Is Emma Young alive? Are you all right?
Me.
She's well.
Ask her. Ask her about Cheng Ha and the father.
Cheng Ha, Suli, and Cheng where?
Young Fu Ge, stopping Shala. Baba, yeah, just I lose song.
They're both dead. Cheng Ha shot by Chan Sorlin's soldiers. The father, starvation.
Oh.
Fang Shuo, Fang Chia Dila, Haisa, Kui Yang La.
Yes, Suli, yes.
What does she say?
She says, we must not think of yesterday. There is tomorrow. And tomorrow her child will be born.
Yes, Mr. Manning, although I saw thousands die along that march, I learned, too, of a spirit of the Chinese people which will never die. Since those days of 1927, the Republican government has made great strides. And although a savage war now is being fought, nothing is too much for the Chinese spirit to overcome. And I am sure there will be a happier tomorrow for China. I was there.
Marketers of Mobil Gas, America's favorite gasoline, and Mobil Oil, the largest selling motor oil in the world, have presented recreations of notable events. But now an invitation from Knox Manning.
It's an invitation for you all again next Sunday evening, ladies and gentlemen, when you'll hear the story of a man who was present at a debate between Stephen A. Douglas and Abraham Lincoln. Until then, on behalf of your Mobil Gas and Mobil Oil dealer, thank you and good night.
I Was There is edited by Everett Tomlinson and produced by Russ Johnson. Original music composed and conducted by Wilbur Hatch. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, the National Broadcasting Company brings you the latest news from abroad. Direct reports by our staff correspondents in foreign capitals. Now, we take you first direct to London.
This is London, Ed Doy speaking. Few speeches of President Roosevelt have received as much attention as his Navy Day address last night. It was preceded by good advance publicity, and today the majority of morning papers held open their front pages to catch the speech in their last editions after 4 o'clock in the morning. Every editor picked out for headline display the President's words, "Damn the torpedoes," and "The shooting has started." Several afternoon papers carried the full text of the speech. Considering that the papers are restricted to 4 ordinary-sized pages, the full text took up about a fifth of the whole paper, including ads. It is too early for much comment, official or unofficial. In authoritative quarters it was said that a prominent cabinet member, possibly Mr. Eden or Mr. Churchill himself, will make a public reference to the speech at the earliest opportunity. What newspaper comment has appeared is restrained and confined more to explanations of events in Washington than to jubilation or elucidation. The Evening News said that in the face of the inexorable logic of events, the President threw out momentous challenges. The debates on them in Congress will be historic. On the people, the President's speech had a heartening effect in view of the gravity of the situation in the Far East and the none too cheerful news from Russia. Authoritative circles were inclined to regard the Soviet-Japanese frontier clash of last Sunday as an isolated incident from which no serious repercussions are to be expected. On the whole, however, a Japanese move is expected at any moment. Nobody professes to know in what direction the Japanese will move. Nervousness about Japan was especially noticeable in the financial districts. Japanese bonds continued to fall slowly. All bonds and shares of companies directly or indirectly interested in the Far East fell in sympathy. The news from Russia is considered gloomy in the short run, but not so from a long-range point of view. Authoritative circles believe that the Germans may be 10 or 15 miles from Rostov and 38 to 40 miles from Moscow. Some military experts believe that the Germans intend to break off the campaign for the winter after they have captured Rostov and made another determined attack on Moscow. In that case, the front will run northward from Rostov to include the whole Donetsk basin, through Kharkov, through or just westward of Moscow, and then northeastward to Leningrad. The Caucasus oil fields are regarded as a front apart, and there may be activity there throughout the winter, with a perpetual threat against Turkey. Reports that the Russian forces which helped the British have been withdrawn from Iran to take up positions for the defense of the Caucasus are officially denied in London. The Russians, it is said, are not as short of troops as all that. King George of England has sent a message of good wishes to the president of the newly created Syrian Republic, Taj ad-Din el-Hassani. The message means that the British government has officially recognized Syria's independence as proclaimed some weeks ago by the Free French commander, General Catroux. The independence, it was stated, is not conditional, but it is probable that the independence accorded is for the duration of the war conditional on a defensive alliance between Syria and the Allies. The recognition procedure adopted has set international legal experts scratching their heads. There is no doubt that the League of Nations, whose approval would ordinarily have had to be obtained, was bypassed. This, it was stated, is not because the League is considered dead, but only dormant because of war conditions. London has ready for emergency the biggest combined catering scheme yet evolved. The scheme would be ready to function immediately the London County Council considered it necessary. West End hotels and workmen's dining rooms, clubs, tea shops, milk bars, and pubs have united to perfect the organization in which each will serve alike. Menus will be standardized. A cup of tea would cost 1 penny, soup 2pence, stew would be 10 cents, and all this would be available in West End hotels or East End coffee stalls. It is emphasized that this blitz feeding would only be introduced if the emergency were really grave, but it is ready to function immediately. I return you now to the National Broadcasting Company in New York.
Now, some late dispatches as received here in the newsroom in New York. This one is dated Moscow. Today's Soviet communique gives no details of the fighting at the front. It says only that Russian and German troops fought overnight in the same sectors of prolonged conflict before Moscow and in the Donetsk Basin. Hitler's armies are said to be 38 to 40 miles from Moscow at the nearest point. And from Tokyo, the Japanese news agency says that an American soldier has been shot by a Chinese in Beiping. The soldier's name is not given, nor whether the shooting was fatal. He is said to have been on duty in front of United States barracks at the time the gunman escaped. And now, next a report direct from the Reich. Here is Alex Dreyer speaking from Berlin.
Hello, NBC. This is Alex Dreyer in Berlin. Official German comment today to the President's speech is again keynoted by the use of such words as swindle, forgery, stupidness, and fantasy. A propaganda ministry spokesman branded the speech as a swindle from beginning to end. He said that the President's statement to having in his possession a so-called secret Nazi map of South America represents the height of falsification. The spokesman said that no such map exists, and if one does, he added, then it's a pure case of forgery. On the other side of the Wilhelmstrasse, the Foreign Office spokesman, who tonelessly commented for 20 minutes, told correspondents that the speech surpasses anything thus far in idiocy and shamelessness. The Foreign Office spokesman put the question, is it the speech of a man who has lost his mind or that of a political criminal? He talked in a low, quiet voice and compared the President with the old German king, Ludwig II of Bavaria, who, according to the Foreign Office spokesman, also had his days of mental abnormality. The spokesman said that the only reaction the German government could give was not political, but medical. DNB maintains that the President has reached an all-time high in fantasy. News from the Eastern Front this afternoon is again limited. The High Command says that the pursuit of the retreating enemy in the Donetsk Basin continues. The communique maintains that German troops yesterday fought their way into the town of Kramatorskaya, about 112 miles southeast of Charkov. The Russians are said to have lost thereby one of their largest tank manufacturing plants. Other industrial towns, according to the communique, were captured by Hungarian troops. Although not mentioned by the High Command, reports here assert that the Luftwaffe yesterday again directed rolling attacks against Soviet lines of communication south and east of Moscow. 7 railway lines are said to have been bombed. The High Command today again holds back all details on land fighting along the Moscow front, beyond saying that operations are in progress. 7 years before the Nazis came to power, Dr. Joseph Goebbels was made Gauleiter of Berlin by Hitler. And today in the German press, which he controls, Goebbels pays tribute to the Berliner in an article titled 15 Years Gau Berlin. Goebbels says that the Berliner has handled himself during the 2 years of war in a manner which deserves high praise. But he says the Reich capital must excel in discipline, in national enthusiasm, in national solidarity, and in proud toughness of its political attitude. Goebbels admits that since the war started, some families have gone without sufficient coal to heat their rooms, and that the difficulties of transportation, as he put it, has at times affected the supplies of vegetables, including the potato, as well as cigarettes and cigars. But Goebbels adds, it was a pleasure to see how the Berliner mastered the difficulties. The propaganda minister, who was a Rhinelander, states he is proud that the capital has never reproached him for not being a Berliner. The people of Berlin, he concluded, are good-humored. The German press today publishes a long list of radio stations which Goebbels says the Germans and people in the occupied countries are allowed to listen to. There are 84 stations listed, some of which indicate the trend of the more recent German conquests. Listed already are Smolensk and stations in Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. The BBC is not listed among the stations, and strangely enough, neither is Radio Rome. This is Alex Dreyer in Berlin, now returning you to NBC in New York.
And that's the latest news on the war. Now, for word of developments at home, here is Earl Godwin speaking from the newsroom in Washington.
Good morning, folks. You know, it's rather difficult to make just a plain news report after you've had your main stuff stolen from you by London and Berlin. Really, they put up two extremes on the president's speech. I think the London attitude is a little more, well, it's completely London with Washington as a contrast. But the Berlin attitude would seem to us here to be perfectly ludicrous, because if this thing gets going, what the Berlin people will need isn't good medical advice. It'll be something else. And when it comes to the ravings of a madman, those boys over there who've heard Hitler on many an occasion certainly ought to be expert on that stuff by now. Well, the president's orders to the American Navy are not only to shoot on sight, as you heard last night, but damn the torpedoes, go ahead. Words by Admiral Farragut, uttered by him when he was lashed to the crow's nest, high above the deck of the gunboat in Mobile Bay, with the black smoke clouding the view from the deck. He climbed up there after letting the crew drink all the coffee they wanted that morning and no rum. And words which were again used by Admiral Dewey, I think it was, at Manila Bay, authentic words to be used by this American president on Navy Day. At least it's thought so here in administration quarters. It's taken to mean an actual part in the war by London editors, as you heard, and according to the news which is trickling over here now, the president outlined a greater part in the war against Nazism. But so far, he outlined it as a part of delivering the goods, but shooting our way over there if necessary. A naval war, or naval combat, or naval hostilities without a declaration. But immediately, Senator Wheeler of Montana, and you know where he stands, comes out with a statement that if the things Mr. Roosevelt fears and says are true, why not ask for a declaration of war now and not sneak in by the back door? Of course, the big news, I think the one piece of news in the speech, outside of the news of its tone and declaration, was the disclosure of that thing which Alex Dreyer said the Germans spurned. The map showing Nazi plans to divide South and Central America into 5 zones and include the Panama Canal under Nazi puppet regime. Also, the plan to wipe out all religion and displace God with Adolf Hitler. Despite the fact that the Germans sneer and laugh and say there's no such map in existence, I think it is at least 2 or 3 years ago that I heard rumors here in Washington from very secret high places that general orders to that effect had been found by American counter-espionage officers and placed in very secretive places so that even all the cabinet officers didn't know anything about them. Well, and as expected, the president took a crack at John Lewis when he called for expansion in production, declared there should be no obstruction either from greedy industrialists or selfish labor leaders. Every coal mine must produce, said the president, but right now the mines John Lewis closed are idle, and Washington awaits the next step in the forthcoming showdown. It's likely the developments will wait until Wednesday or Thursday after Lewis and Myron Taylor meet. The President has made 3 appeals to Mr. Lewis, to which the mine labor union chieftain has made no reply to the first, said no to the second, and no comment to the third. Congress is upset over the strike situation, has offered further and drastic legislation to stop the defense industry strikes, but so far the administration has brushed aside these suggestions, and unless something is done, I think the President will now ask for legislation or open the mines by the government, and that's all from Washington at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Godwin. Now, we've heard from Ed Doyce in London, Alex Dreyer in Berlin, and Earl Godwin in Washington in another of NBC's morning news roundups. Keep tuned to this station for the latest news. This is the National Broadcasting Company.